Good evening. This Board of Selectmen meeting in the town of Adams on Wednesday, September 6th, 2023 is now called to order. If you could all please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. The agenda does indicate a set of minutes. However, they are not in front of us this evening, so the August 16th minutes will be put on the agenda for our September 20th meeting, and so there's no action needed by the board. That brings us now to public comment. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak to the Board of Selectmen about a matter not on the agenda? Okay, yes? Okay. I saw the head moving. I was like, all right, Brian, you're up. Okay. All right, then. So I think that'll take us right on to new business. Jay, I will let you make the introduction of our guest speaker this evening.
Sure. While Doug and Kyle make their way up to the podium, I'll give a quick introduction. So everybody knows Adams is home to a lime quarry that has been mined by Specialty Minerals lately, along with several other companies down the road. And Specialty Minerals is really works to a certain extent behind the scenes. They're just there, I think, but I think we forget that they're a large industry, and they've been around for a while. So Doug has spoken with member Novak, has spoken with member Rosenberg, and Joe put me in touch with Doug. I had a great conversation with him. And everybody agreed that at some point Doug should come in and just give an overview to the community in terms of what Specialty Minerals is doing, what their employment numbers are, and really what is going on there and what the future of SMI looks like. So that's kind of what we're going to get tonight. We thank Doug. Doug was in retirement, now out of retirement, and now back. So we're glad to have him. He's been very communicative in his time here, so thank you, Doug, for coming in.
So it reminds me of 20 years ago when I first interviewed in Adams at Specialty Minerals, and of course moved on, went to California with the company, and wound up in New York, but Adams needed a little bit of help here. That's why I'm here. It'll be a short stint, maybe another couple of months before we fully build out the management team there. But I've got Kyle Ledbetter with me today. Kyle's been here for at least 3 years, so he's the face that you can call if there are issues or community events that you'd like us to participate in, and we would enjoy that very much. Kyle is an occupational engineer, so on the safety side. I'm a mining engineer by trade, so I enjoy coming to the big plants where we do a lot of mining. Maybe just a little bit of history about the plant. It started back in 1848, and so it's been here many, many years. I won't go through the whole litany, but in 1962, Pfizer bought the plant, and then we IPO'd, Minerals Technologies IPO'd, got to be on our own in 1992, and it's been owned by Minerals Technologies for all the years hence. We have about 1,400 acres. It spans Adams and North Adams, where we mine. Most of the property is under mining, but we have a large plant there, and I can, ultimately, we do a number of different products out of there. So a lot of people wonder what we do in this plant. So we run 4 lime kilns there, and part of the byproduct of that is lime. It's a reactive limestone, and then we convert the CO2. That's the gas that comes off of the conversion. Now we capture the CO2. There's a purpose behind the CO2 that I'll get to later. But it's not just liberated into the air. It's a valuable product for us. Of course, everybody's worried about greenhouse gases and those kind of things, but we do capture all of that and then put it back into the product. So lime is about 80,000 tons a year of lime that we sell. Goes into things like remediation, goes into construction. You see it a lot on road projects where they're trying to stabilize. Also, if you've got acidic ponds, it goes into neutralizing the ponds. Then we produce about 250,000 tons a year of what I call ground calcium carbonate. So what is ground calcium carbonate used for? Well, it goes into things like roofing products, asphalt shingles. It goes into things like poultry and poultry feed. Chickens actually need the calcium carbonate to produce healthy eggs. And so that's a little bit of a sidebar. And then probably what we're most well known for is the PCC, so precipitated calcium carbonate. And what the magic is, it's about capturing the CO2. There's some heat aging going on. We mix water with it and then bubble the CO2 back in. And depending on residence time, we can control a crystal shape. And we call that rheology. So, and why is that important? Well, it's important in the automotive industry. Goes into paints and coatings, the noise deadening in your cars. That's important. Sealants. So if you think about high-rise buildings in the cities, all of your windows are put on with sealants. And we sell to all of the big sealant manufacturers in the U.S. as well as overseas. So this is a big business, not only regional in reach, but also in global reach. So China, Thailand, and other places, all comes out of Adams. And then the last one I want to leave you with is pharma. So that deposit is probably one of the best deposits in the world. Definitely, I would put it in the top 2 or 3 in the United States. Low lead, low insols, which are insolubles, which is what the drug manufacturers need. So if you think about Rolaids and you have an upset stomach, that goes into things like Rolaids. And there's other pharma-type applications. So if you think about almond milk and it says calcium fortified, chances are it's coming out of Adams. Before I hand it over to Kyle, I did want to leave you with, we're moving a lot of people into Adams, and so I've got at least 13 new management employees that have joined us. We're looking for one more, which is my position, but they're coming from all over the world to come to Adams. I've got an individual from Central Africa. I've got 3 individuals from Mexico that have come in, and so we're bringing in a lot of talent that typically we would have had here locally, but we've had to go pretty far outside of the regions. In addition, we're bringing in quite a few people in the technical areas like welding, electricians, and all of that. So, and every one of them that are coming in are asking about things like schools, affordable housing. And even though we pay pretty good wages, we're about $11 million in wages annually at that plant with 115 employees, so pretty good wages. It's still hard for them to find places to live in the area. We've been fortunate over the years to have a lot of local talent with us. We're 2nd and 3rd generations. You can't go to any of the stores without, you know, if I say I work for Specialty Minerals, oh yeah, my dad worked there, or my grandfather worked there. So it's really a really terrific location, terrific Adams location. And I think what people like most is the connection to community. And what I would leave you with is help us to find affordable housing, help us to find and improve the schools. We're really well connected with McCann for the technical side. We've used them quite a bit. They've supplied us with a lot of people, but it really is. So what I would leave you with too is the spouse that works at the plant is I'd say 50-50 of coming here. Maybe it's more like 60%, but that spouse and kids that are moving here, good schools, affordable housing, and you've got a great community spirit here, and we're happy to be part of it. So with that, I'm going to leave it to Kyle.
Thanks, Doug. Hello, everybody. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak with you today. So as Doug mentioned, there's a lot of moving parts to the business, a lot going on at the plant, and there's two primary core values behind our operation. And it's that we operate the business in a safe manner, considerate of our employees' health and safety, and then that we operate in a manner that has no negative impacts to the local environment, the local community, and the area around us. As the EH&S manager at the plant, that's where my head's at 24/7. How can we enhance that commitment? So on the safety side, with safety being the core value, we've developed some recent risk assessment protocol that we built into the way we do our jobs and our tasks that go on throughout the plant. We've also built out people-centric near-miss reporting, hazard identification, ways for our employees to voice, hey, this is a safety concern, this doesn't feel right, and for the management team to be engaged. Suggestion systems are very important and really just capturing that dialogue of the team that's out there living it. With that being said, we've gone 294 days since our last injury at the plant and 894 days since the last lost time injury. So considering we're around heavy equipment, a lot of people, a lot of moving parts, non-routine work, that's a record that we're very proud of. We were recognized last year for 2022 for not having any lost time. We received an award from MSHA, which is the OSHA equivalent in the mining industry. So something we're proud of, but something that we also want to build upon. On the environmental front, we have many exciting projects going on. The one that's closest to coming to fruition is a new minerals management landfill that's actually in the base of the quarry. So quarry is about a mile long and quarter-mile deep. And this minerals landfill, so it's our mineral product that goes into this landfill, it's the first step to reclaiming the quarry and restoring that original ecosystem. So it's in the area that we've already mined, and then we'll continue to execute that quarry permit throughout the life of the mine. Something that we're excited about, and again, it involves a lot of hydro seeding and a lot of planting native plants, and just bringing back the bird population is something that we've been considerate of as we've gone through the planning of that landfill. So we're pretty excited about that. The other thing on the environmental front is we've recently improved upon an existing system that we have called FilterSense. And FilterSense is emission monitoring, predominantly a dust monitoring system that allows our operators in the plant to proactively identify a potential event that might make dust. And I understand that the community doesn't want to live in an area where we have excess dust, so it's something that we've invested quite a bit of money into, quite a bit of training, time, and right now we're seeing our high dust alarms. So if we have leakage from an area of the plant, we're seeing those alarms down by about 75% year over year. So it's something that we're very proud of. Lastly, the third piece, you have environmental, you have health, and the last one's sustainability. And how are we not only improving, but how are we contributing to the local ecosystems and not having an impact on them? And one of the big things is pretty well known in town here that we consume quite a bit of water at the Adams plant. We're sitting on an aquifer. We pump water, as Doug mentioned, to manufacture PCC. We brought in some engineers and we've looked at some of the leading technology around water pumps and interlocks around some of our wet screening processes. And we've reduced year over year our water consumption and discharge by around 17%, which is 700,000 gallons a day and 250,000 gallons a year. So enough to move the needle, another thing we're proud of. And then the last thing that we're doing at the plant is We generate landfill waste, whether it be off-spec product, co-products generated in our process, and we've been pretty aggressively pursuing buyers for that landfill waste. The agriculture industry, recycling industry, and then landfill cover, local landfills will use our material as a cover. And that's something that we want to build upon, but we've grown that part of the business, co-product. It's beneficial reuse through the state. It's a part of the business that has also exponentially grown. So a lot going on at the plant, a lot of action, and we believe we're doing it in a safe and environmentally friendly way. Thanks.
Great. Thank you for being here, and thank you for the overview. So I'll open it up to the board. I know I have some questions, but I'll open up to my colleagues first.
Sure.
If they have any questions. So Joe, do you have anything?
First of all, I'd like to thank Doug in coming down, and yourself also. I'm happy to hear about your zeal when it comes to environmental issues. I think that's the future of mining. In the past, as we well know, a lot of mines that are abandoned now were certainly not environmentally friendly. And being an extractive industry, you're under the auspices of federal government, like the Bureau of Reclamation. So how often do you see those people? I mean, they tell you about slopes, how your slopes can be. So tell us a little bit about that, how that works.
So I can tell you that every day of the week, there seems to be an audit at the plant. So whether it's FDA, whether it's mine safety and health, whether it's DEP, whether it's other folks that come in. We have food safety, there's GMP audits, and so there's a lot of moving wheels at the site. Most of those audits are unannounced. They do just show up, which is fine, and we're welcoming, and we want to make sure that it's always good to get an extra couple of eyes or more than that on our process. Typically, we leave with observations, and then there's corrective actions around that. Minor findings, perhaps, but it is. There are a lot of folks that do come in to audit that plant, and then in addition to that, we have consultants that come in that help us with areas of expertise where we might not know. That as an expert. So land slope stability would be a good one. Groundwater discharge would be another one. So there's a lot of help that we use through third-party consultants, as well as many of the regulators are very helpful and willing to share information to make it better for us and the community.
Another question. It seems pretty archaic how your pools are, where you have to go across the street and dig them out. Is there any other way that you see in the future of doing away with those type of settling ponds?
Well, we'd like to do that. Most of most of that is product that we could sell if it would be in a form that we could use. So I know Kyle talked about ways to capture that product. I don't, everything that goes across the street's got to come back across the street, and so it's a waste of movement and a waste of product, and so it would be certainly an area that we'd like to explore. We've done a lot of good things, but there's more to be done. And ultimately, if anybody's got any suggestions on how to help us with that, we would love to hear it.
And I'll stop there, but it was a pleasure meeting you, Doug, and
Thank you.
Eric. Is it Eric? Kyle, excuse me, Kyle.
Yeah.
The conversations I had with you were really fruitful, and I'll continue to talk with you. And once again, Specialty Minerals has been with us for a long time. You're an important aspect to our community. I know we have people in our community that, you know, frown a little bit, especially on dust and other parts of specialty minerals, but all in all, I believe you've been a good neighbor for all the years you've been here. Others might question that assumption. And lastly, are you ever thinking about electrifying your fleet, like your ukes instead of a diesel and all that kind of stuff? Because those run in all of your equipment and things. Is that something you've looked at? And that will be my last question.
Yeah. So right now, the industry is natural gas.
Yeah.
That is then it's an easy convert to hydrogen power. Right now, that's where the industry is at. Electricity, right now, it's not, the technology isn't there for the large scale vehicles, but.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You know, one of the things we'd like to do is so we converted 2 of the kilns over to natural gas. We still run 2 kilns intermittently on number 6 oil. And we'd love to convert those, but the gas line feeding the plant is not large enough to be able to convert those 2 kilns. And so in the absence of that, we've talked to a number of different ways of perhaps converting those. We've looked at microwave. That wasn't a good technology for us. But I think as technology is evolving so quickly today and that's why we're bringing people in from outside the country, because they may have different ideas on how to do that.
Okay, that's all I have now.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Howard?
Thanks, guys, for coming. It was
Thank you.
a great presentation. Got a better idea of what's going on. Regarding housing, Doug, you had mentioned the housing shortage, and that is a big problem across the board in the Berkshires. If you could just speak for a moment on what the future of the plant is, to give people, like developers are listening, and the other part 2 of that question is, how are you dealing with the housing shortage now? Because it's real. So it's 2 parts.
So we've been fortunate over the years to have stable employment, and I would say starting about 6 years ago, we had a number of retirees, and so the plant has been turning over, and we still have a number of people that still have 30-plus years in with the company. We've gotten notices of potential retirements, so we track all that and then look to hire those employees. So it's very difficult in today's environment to attract people to work at an industry. Maybe 20 years ago it was local. Your father and mother worked at the plant. The sons and daughters would come and work at the plant, and that's just the way it was. It's not that way anymore. The other thing that's evolved is the technical side of the business. So things like engineering, technical skills, and so we're finding it very difficult to hire those positions. And even though we've increased the wages, we're competitive, we do market surveys, it still winds up being very, very difficult. So somebody that's, moving to Boston versus Adams might be difficult to get somebody here. And then just because the worker is willing to come because it's a great job, the family may not be willing to move. So we're seeing, it wasn't like when I was growing up where I'd move California, Boston, wherever, and today there's much more sense of community. People want to stay put, and parents want to see their grandkids. So it's tough to extract people and bring them. It doesn't matter whether it's Adams or California. We're having a difficult time, and it's not just our business. I talk to a lot of business, and it's a difficult area around people and how to attract talent. But it's made easier with good schools. So the first thing that I get a question of somebody coming in is, how's the school system? What's it look like in Adams? How's Pittsfield? How's Williamstown? How's North Adams? And then what's the housing look like? Can I afford to live there? And I would say over the last 3 or 4 years, housing prices, like a lot of places, have really skyrocketed. And I'm worried that it's shutting a lot of folks out of owning a home, and even the rentals wind up being difficult.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and one final question. If you could address us in the audience about, the specialty minerals has a large footprint as an impact on Adams. How the community should contact you with regarding any issues?
So doors always open. And also if there's a member of the community that would like to come in, would like to do a tour, we're always open and welcome. You can call myself. Jay has my cell phone number, and Howard, you do too, as well as Joe. Always open, always willing to meet. Also phone conversations. And then the reason that I brought Kyle here is when I retire finally, Kyle will be the contact here at the plant. We'll have a new plant manager here, and what I would leave you with is the sense of community, the sense of environmentalism in our company goes all the way up to the CEO of the company. So it's not just stops at me, but it's throughout the whole company. So we take complaints and suggestions very seriously. We log them. There's follow-up required, and it will be dealt with in a very quick and efficient way.
Okay, thank you.
So, gentlemen, I'll put it into 3 categories, my questions. So I'll ask you about employment, environmental, and education. So you guys can figure out who's going to answer which questions. But I'll start with employment. I've been fortunate enough to tour the plant a number of times, not in my role as on the select board, but in some of my employment. And I think it was fall of 2017 that they had shared with me, the then plant manager and the management team, that you were looking at a 40 to 60% retirement in 5, maybe 6 years. So you did allude to it a little bit, that you have seen those retirements. I'm wondering if that is what ended up happening, and if COVID exacerbated those retirements, and because that's a lot of management positions that you're adding in right now.
Yeah, I would say on the employment, it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think we were pretty well locked down, I think, as most businesses were, and so that frustrated a lot of our employees. It was check-in, temperature checks, stay home. We tried to make it a little bit easier by we would pay up to 2 weeks for COVID related illnesses. So we did take care of employees. Business did drop off a little bit. What we worked on are things like Kyle talked about, are things like the environmental side, how to be more efficient. We are a continuous improvement company, and it's too much to talk about that here today, but if you'd like to know about operational excellence, I'd be happy to talk to you about it. But it is a challenge for us, and so many people say they're going to retire, and then they look at their portfolio, and then they say, well, maybe I'll hang on for another couple of years. But we know it's going to happen, so and you can't hire people and expect that they're going to be able to jump into those jobs tomorrow. So there's a pretty lengthy learning curve to get to know how this plant works, and which winds up being another part of the challenge, because big exodus, a lot of new people coming in, we got to make sure that they know how to operate the equipment and have the sensitivities to things like air, dust, water, and make sure we run this location in control.
Along the employment lines, I'll share a little bit about my background. So I moved here in 2006, considered a trailing spouse. It's my least favorite term that people use because my spouse moved here in 2005. Neither of us with any connection to the Berkshires, certainly no connection to Adams, but we have found a home here, we have found community here, and we really do enjoy it. So it can happen, so you can let your employees know that is something that happens here. And there are materials that will help with some of that transition, so if you do need any welcome brochures, I know that there's a group here in Adams that created a welcome brochure that's specific to this town, but there are some in other communities, and I know that there's a county-wide one. So if you should need any of that for your employees, you can let Jay or Bree know.
That would be awesome.
And
Yeah.
I can get them the
Thank you.
resources.
Thank you.
So on the environmental side, I will also let you know that I live in the Renfrew neighborhood. So I'm a neighbor, so I'm close by. The complaints or the calls that I get typically are around the lime dust. So I was happy to hear about it was at Filter Science? Is that?
Filter Sense.
Filter Sense, thank you, that you've installed and are working with, and it seems to be decreasing the amount of dust. Anecdotally, I'll tell you, like, this year I saw less than I did last year, and I received far less phone calls. But I also send people to the plant directly for them to contact somebody. But I don't know if you want to speak to a little bit more about the lime dust. And then the other item that people call me about are the hours of day that Specialty Minerals is mining. Because they'll see trucks, or they'll hear the trucks, or whatever it might be, and just wondering when that's happening, when the blasts are happening, and so forth. So if you might be able to talk a little bit about schedule and lime dust.
Yeah. So around the lime dust, Filter Sense, preventative maintenance, building out our preventative maintenance programs on our equipment, and we've staffed those positions deeper than they have been historically, which, we don't want dust any more than the community wants dust. So again, proactively identifying those and using the technology to our advantage, and it takes a lot of training, education, lunch and learns, things like that. And the other thing is lime goes into our landfills. And right now our landfills are at, don't quote me on it, 1,600 feet elevation. This new landfill, which will be our primary landfill, is going to be 1,300 feet below the edge of the quarry, in the bottom of the quarry. That's going to have a big impact on when you get the gusts of winds coming off the mountain. That's going to have a big impact on picking up that lime particulate and blowing it, particularly in your area, which is west of us, southwest. That you will see an impact there, and that will happen this year. So another reason we're very excited about that.
Great. And hours, did you touch upon that? Is it, what are the hours of the operation?
So the operation is 24/7, but the mine is only during the day.
Okay.
Yep. So there is no drilling. It would be drilling. That we only do shots during midday. And I believe we have staged some of the days so that there was this group of individuals that worked from home, and particularly Tuesday, I think, was a day where people were working from home. So we made it a point to stagger our shots, so we do blasting on Tuesdays.
Okay.
So one small correction, we work 2 shifts in the mine.
Okay.
So basically about 10 o'clock at night is when we cut down. One of the things that we've been allowed to do, and MSHA is very much against it, but the backup alarms on the trucks. So at night we use strobe lights. They've allowed us to do that because we know that noise impacts, especially at night, will carry further. And so we're attuned to that. I will tell you, we're not perfect. We've got a lot of room to grow, but I'm here to tell you that we welcome the challenge, and in today's world, whether it's sound curtains or all sorts of opportunity, that we use all materials. I also know that, maybe I could digress a little bit, but trucking, 90% of our product is trucked out of the plant. We would love it if we could do rail. Rail has been a difficult entity to deal with. We're excited, though, that they've been sold to a, I guess it's a short line, part of the CSX. They seem to be a little bit more communicative. Jay, I know we've worked back and forth a little bit about how do we get more rail out of there to keep more trucks off the road. But with 10% rail, 90% trucking, there's a lot of our customers that would like nothing better than to go rail. And if we could figure out how to do that, that would be win-win for both the community and our business.
And then my last topic was education. I'm always going to plug education. So you mentioned working with McCann, and I think that is wonderful. I would also recommend working with Hoosick. Hoosick Valley was just here 2 weeks ago, I think, at our last meeting, talking about all the pathways that they are putting in place starting this fall. And I feel like there was a pathway that would align. Well, there was an engineering pathway, so I think that
Right.
there's something there that would align with the work
Sure.
that's being done at Specialty Minerals. And,
Some of the health and safety
Yeah.
pathways might be,
Right.
Oh, really?
yeah.
because they're looking for employers to partner with them on those pathways. So I think that would be a good connection to connect with the
And
superintendent.
get you in touch with the
Okay,
superintendent.
that's great. I would tell you that we are going to turn over our employee population by 40% in the next 5 years. And so there is a huge need for Hoosick, there's a huge need for McCann, other places. And you can still do, and with the overtime at the plant, you can still have a very nice living and able to raise family in a community that has a lot to offer.
And I wouldn't forget about our public institutions of Berkshire Community College and MCLA either. So if you need any of those contacts, we can probably get you in touch.
Yeah.
So I don't have anything else. I feel like I grilled you enough, so. Anything? All right.
Apologize, it was a little bit more than 10 minutes, so.
That's
apologize for
okay.
that.
Thank you.
No, thank you very much. We appreciate the time
Thank you.
and the introduction.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, Madam Chair, would you
Yeah.
want to know if anybody in the audience might want to ask questions?
Oh,
Is that doable?
If they're open to it, it's not a public hearing, so we don't normally, but if you're open to taking some questions, we could open it to the, is there anybody in the audience who wanted to ask a question? Yes? Yes?
Not really a question, but I just talked to Kyle today, and I've had noise complaints.
Can you state your name?
Sean Sutliff.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you.
And had a very nice conversation. He mentioned some kind of curtain technology for that Raymond mill. They have made improvements in the noise. There are times when they could do better, but I really appreciate that they're stepping in that direction. My wife and I are both deaf in one ear, and it still can wake you up at night sometimes.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Great. So we'll move on to licensing. All right. So the first item under licensing is a one-day Sunday entertainment license for the Adams Theater for Sunday, September 17th at, September 17th after 1 p.m. I believe the event is 7 p.m. It is a concert that will feature 2 bands, but it is a scholarship fundraiser. So this is actually required by the state, not locally. Anything else, Bree?
Just You'll remember that the Adams Theater did not move forward with an annual Sunday entertainment license. So anytime they have an event in that space, they need to pursue a one-day license.
For Sundays.
For Sundays, yes.
Okay. What would be the board's pleasure?
I'll make a motion to issue the Adams Theater a one-day Sunday entertainment license located at 27 Park Street for Adams, and this is for Sunday, September 17th at 1 p.m.
After 1 p.m.
After 1 p.m.
There's a designation by the state of a before 1 or after 1. That's the,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Okay, so I have a motion by Howard. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Joe. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed or abstention? That is unanimous. So we also have a one-day public entertainment license, and this is for the same event. The entertainment license is in the name of Antonio Cardano Scholarship Fund, who will be having the event at the Adams Theater on Sunday, September 17th from 5 to 10 p.m.
I'll make a motion to issue a one-day public entertainment license to Antonio Cardino Scholarship Fund at the Adams Theater, 27 Park Street in Adams, for Sunday, September 17th, from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m.
Okay, I have a motion by Howard. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Joe. Any discussion?
Yes, just out of curiosity, who's Antonio Cardino Scholarship? Who is he? Anyone know?
I do not.
I was not provided that information.
Anything else? Okay, hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed or abstention? That is unanimous. Okay. That brings us to the third licensing item. This is a facility use request by the Thunderbolt Ski Runners to use the Greylock Glen gazebo and to use the Glen area, including the Meadow Loop Trail, for a, bicycles. Bicycles? They're not running.
Bicycles.
Yeah, bicycles on September 30th, 2023. The event time is 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., but they will start and finish at the gazebo.
I'll make a motion to approve the facility use request for the Thunderbolt Ski Runners for September 30th, 2023, which will include the Greylock Glen, the Meadow Loop Trail, and the Greylock Glen gazebo. And this would be between the hours of 12 p.m. and 5 p.m.
Yeah, I think the event itself is 12 to 5. They're requesting it from 9 to 4.
9 to 4?
9 to 4 is the facility request form hours.
Okay,
Yeah.
9 to 4
9 to 4.
Okay,
for the hours.
thank you. All right, I have a motion by Howard. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Joe. Any discussion or questions?
What is the event that it's going
It's a bike around event, so
to, for
they're
which one?
a bike around. So
Oh,
they're
yes.
going in and out of the Glen. They'll be in various areas. They're actually kind enough to attach a map of their route, which also includes what areas of the Glen they intend to use.
Very good, thank you.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That is unanimous. And our last one is for the same event. Bright Ideas has been asked to serve on behalf of the Thunderbolt Ski Runners at the Bike Around event on September 30th at the Greylock Glen gazebo. Their paperwork is in hand, including their insurance information, as well as their tips information, but they are looking for a one-day license to serve malt only. So this is September 30th, and they've put down noon to 5.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve a one-day liquor license to Bright Ideas to serve at the Thunderbolt Ski Runners Bike Around event on September 30th at the Greylock Glen gazebo for the hours of 12 p.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay, I have a motion by Howard. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Joe. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? That is unanimous. All right, thank you very much. So we have a few presentations coming up from the Community Development Department. Jay, do you want to introduce this part of the agenda?
Sure. While our Community Development Department, you can see, is mobilized on the front row, we have 3 different presentations tonight. This is just a snapshot into some of the work that the Community Development Department does. Not a lot of people realize how much that department touches different aspects or handles different aspects within the town of Adams. And the first one is probably the most unique one that you may not think is necessarily a community development project, but a lot of the skill sets that our staff applies or uses in order to effectuate some of these projects are similar. The first one up is the Northern Berkshire Digital Equity Plan. And Director Coughlin has named our town planner, Kevin Rayner, as the speaker tonight. So come on up, Kevin. And he's going to brief everybody on the Northern Berkshire Digital Equity Plan and what that means and how Adams is involved in it. Kevin?
So, good evening. Like Jay said, I am the town planner. You'll have to forgive me, this is my first select board, so
Welcome. We're not a scary group. We're very
feel
welcoming.
nothing but calm
Good.
here. So, like Jay said, I'm going to be discussing some of our projects. The project I'm going to be talking about is our digital equity plan. We're in a regional digital equity plan with, it's sponsored by Massachusetts Broadband Institute, or MBI. So essentially it's a grant process. They're paying for the entire process, the planning process, the consultant fees, whatnot. We are joined in this program by our neighboring communities, Florida, North Adams, Cheshire, Lanesboro. And so we will be submitting this plan together. So I should probably talk about what digital equity is. Digital equity is basically leveling the playing field for people, giving opportunities to people who may be disadvantaged, who don't have access to technology, who don't have access to stable internet connection, who may not know how to use technology. So it's essentially, you know, the world's getting more and more digital. You know, you might see that you have to renew your license online, or you may have to apply for a job online. And if you don't have access to certain technology or internet connection, you may be at a disadvantage when it comes to, you know, getting a job or completing a service online. So digital equity is focusing on leveling the playing field to make sure that everybody has the same opportunity when it comes to, you know, digital technology. So in this planning process, we're hoping to identify and diagnose issues in the communities, in our community and in the other communities that are involved in the study. So we're hoping to, you know, point out the issues. And then our consultant, we have a consultant who is VHB, and they're helping us through the process. They're leading us through the planning process. They will help us develop the digital equity plan, and they will provide us with recommendations on how to move forward. So far with VHB, we've had a kickoff meeting where they helped us form a digital equity plan steering committee, and we meet monthly to discuss updates to the plan, how things are progressing, whatnot. Totally, so far, VHB has begun stakeholder meetings with various stakeholders in the community. These can be things like library, council on aging, you know, school systems, people who deal with, you know, people who might need access, so students might need access to laptops or internet connection. You know, elderly might have classes on how to use certain technology and new systems and whatnot. So they've been asking and having meetings with stakeholders to get their input on how to, and what the issues might be and how we might go about fixing them. There are going to be 3 stakeholder meetings. They're currently ongoing with the first round of those. They've also scheduled one of 2 public meetings. The first one will be on October 24th at the Adams Visitor Center at 6 p.m. So we hope to tap the public's input on what issues they may see in the community, what things we might be able to address. MBI, Massachusetts Broadband Institute, our sponsor on this grant, they will also be holding their own listening session, input session. That will be at the Zion Lutheran Church in Pittsfield, and that's September 13th from 3 to 5 p.m. It's in person. There's also a Zoom link. We have posted the flyer on the Adams website. I brought a few flyers today, if anybody's interested. So that should be a good place to get some input and hear about the process in general from MBI themselves. So at the end of this, I'd like to say, this is a great opportunity for Adams. We can really look into what we can work on in terms of digital equity. I mean, we're a rural community, so we can, catch up to maybe some of the more urban communities like in Eastern Mass and whatnot. And this could be a very good step forward for Adams and help our community grow and, adapt into the new environment that we find ourselves in. And so, I mean, the grant pays for all of our consultant charges and planning process. And part of the planning process is to provide recommendations on how to move forward and provide grant opportunities that may be able to assist us in getting to that point. So I think this is a great opportunity for Adams, and I'll leave it open to the board for questions.
Thanks, Kevin. Any questions from the board?
Yes, I was just wondering, VHB is overseeing this. Is this grant going to cover their work?
Yes.
Okay, because I was just wondering about equity. Should the 5 communities be sharing the cost? But if it's a grant, that's great.
Yep.
And how much was the grant total for?
I think the total scope of their work was something around like 120,000 or somewhere around there.
Yeah.
I don't have the exact number, but essentially it was just covering the consultant fees and the planning fees. So whatever BHB's scope was, and I believe it was around 120,000.
Okay, that's all I have.
Great. Howard?
Thanks, Kevin. I have a basic question. Because technology is changing so fast, this process seems pretty bureaucratic. But that aside, could you give us an idea of the scope of the problem? Because everywhere I look, no matter what socioeconomic income, I see kids with smartphones, which could do
Right.
some amazing things. So you could give us an idea of the magnitude of this problem and what are we really dealing with?
So, I mean, you might see kids with smartphones and stuff, and there is definitely, connection to the internet everywhere. But you could see, especially during the pandemic, there were massive outages on Zoom when people tried to go on Zoom. I know in Pittsfield, they tried to, cancel school and still have everybody go on Zoom, and it didn't work out because, people didn't have connection or there's connection outages. So, people might be shut out from education if they can't get on Zoom or if they can't get on their classes.
So you say it's a bandwidth problem, it's giving enough access to the...
So that's part of the problem. And then there's also the, just getting people the ability to access technology, having like maybe publicly available computers that people can go to if they don't have a computer at home, where they can access the internet or print something out. The libraries usually provide those services, but also training people on how to use technology because, if you're maybe somebody my age and you've grown up with that, it's pretty intuitive to you, but if you haven't and you've gotten, lost in the change of technology and you're not quite up to speed on technology, it might be helpful for somebody to have a workshop and say, hey, this is how you get on this system, or this is how you use Word or Excel or PowerPoint, and give them a basic tutorial, and that puts them on the same level with the basic skills to, engage with technology that many people who are, maybe entering the job market right now already have.
So what I'm trying to get an idea is how many people is this affecting in our population?
Well, so
most people can use a cell phone to do it.
right, and that's part of what the study's gonna look at is how many we have that might need this help and how we might go about helping them out. Then that's pretty much what we're trying to do with this is to identify that number.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, because it seems like it's bandwidth, it's infrastructure, it's the equity issue, it's training, it's a number of reasons why people can't connect to technology and how we as a community might be able to make it more accessible. So I'm happy to see that there's a plan that's going to develop some recommendations, but in addition to the recommendations of what needs to be done to make, technology more equitable. I like this last piece about the future funding investigation as well, right? So we'll have a list of recommendations, but we'll also have some sources of funding that could be identified that'll help us address some of those recommendations. So to Howard's point, maybe we do move a little bit quicker in addressing some of these recommendations that
Right.
come forward.
And we're hoping that this grant will open us up to more funding in the future. So I believe that this grant is a gateway to more increased ability to do things in this sphere.
And we should thank our state rep who did put this forward for the communities to help us be able to come up with a plan to address this issue. Right, it was our state rep and senator? Or just state rep? I know that John Barrett's office sent it to me initially, so. So I'm going to give him credit tonight. How about that? Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I just have
Sure, have it.
one suggestion on the stakeholder sessions, that basically the economic growth of a community has a lot to do with the bandwidth and access to high-speed internet. From a stakeholder standpoint, would it make sense to have it the issue of increasing bandwidth for everybody, including the business community, to lower the cost of information technology, so that it would really address a much more broader scope and have a bigger return for the community, as opposed to just a bottoms up where you're just looking at John Doe can't get on the internet.
And we are absolutely tapping businesses, local businesses as well. They're involved in the conversation as well. So
So you're talking about aggregating demand to get high-speed bandwidth, for example, and make it very cheap? Okay, great.
Yeah, and may I just have a comment? I think in the past, that's been a problem for people that want to work from home, particularly people that may have second homes, may want to move to this area and be able to work from their homes. They need the bandwidth, they need the speed, so I know that's been a shortfall for people that want to start a business or continue away from, a city setting and come here and be able to get their work done.
Right.
So I hope that works out, because I know people that have tried have had some problems with the bandwidth and the speed.
Yeah. So just to reiterate what Joe said and emphasize it, as a select board member, would like to see bandwidth capacity increased and the price brought down.
Right.
And everybody wins. The lower income people win, business wins. And then Joe's point, people who come out here, relocate here, and they need to work from home, that's huge for the growth of this town. So that's
and that should all be part of the planning process.
very good.
And I invite you guys to both show up at the public workshop on October 24th.
24th.
October
6
20,
PM at the Adams Visitor Center
Posting it.
to state those exact items again.
October
Yep.
24th, okay.
Yeah, we're the kickoff community for this.
And the stakeholder sessions would have finished by then,
Yep, oh,
so they'll have some data.
I believe they're gonna have three, I think
Three
they
by
said.
then, okay.
3 rounds of stakeholders, but the first one's already ongoing.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Mr.
All
Brown?
right, next up, Cook Street Park Project. Well, I believe Becky Ferguson from our Community Development Department is going to come up and speak about this project. Just to put this in the context, over the last, I want to say probably a good 10 years, Adams has worked in the areas adjacent to the Ashewilticook Rail Trail
Do you need help?
to develop some park areas, pocket park areas. That would include the Sail Park down by Depot and Pleasant Street. It would include the train station area on Hoosick Street, and now we're working our way to the north. And this area that we're focusing on is the Cook Street, former Hoosick Valley Coal and Grain property. As people may know, the town acquired that, I believe, by tax default, I think, several years ago. We've undergone a visioning session to see what it is that the community would like to see on that property. The designs pretty much stayed the same. Becky's going to walk you through it, and she's going to, you can see the construction equipment over there. We're announcing tonight that construction has begun. So Becky will walk you through the project, what it's going to look like, what the steps are, and what to expect over the next several months while they work.
Sure, thank you. So yes, construction has started. We hired DF Lane Landscaping. They're out of Lenox as our main contractors. They've been out there for a couple weeks clearing land. And as Jay said, the plans, you've seen this probably many times, is basically the same. Here's the Ashawiltacook, here's Columbia Street, here's the river. There'll be a little off-leash dog area, there'll be over here, there'll be a plaza area over here, there'll be lots of lawn area and picnic area.
Yeah, could you bring it out? Yeah, so I was gonna say that so that people could see it at home. There you go.
Got it? There will be
You can speak up too, Ryan, it's okay.
play area in here, and a lot of the remnants from the original Coal and Grain site are remaining. We thought we'd honor that sort of background of the site, that industrial background. So a couple tank saddles and some coal bunkers are going to stay in place and be sort of cut into interesting things that people can interact with. The one change that we are pursuing is that this small barn building, we had hoped to originally restore it into another use, but after an architect looked more closely at it, and recommended that it actually come down. So the town approved some funding at town meeting for that demolition. We've gone to the Historic Commission and the Parks Commission, and we've gone to our funders about the issue to get all the approvals, and we think that will come down. And in that area, the foundation, the platform will remain, and hopefully it can turn into a little gazebo or something else in the future, but it'll be certainly a better use for people as that than an inaccessible structure that's in poor condition.
One of the points that Eamon had made to me when he and I were out there, as Becky was describing, the value in keeping that foundation because of its proximity to the river. We may not be able to replicate a building there if we were to destroy the foundation. So by keeping the foundation in place, it may allow us in the future to achieve that vision of some type of a band shell, some type of a structure by doing that. So just because the surface building is gone doesn't necessarily mean it'll always be that way.
Right.
It allows us to be flexible down the road.
It is going to be covered right now. The plan is to cover it with some stones, so it won't be concrete. Concrete's a little cracked, so it'll be a little bit safer. We're still have dreams and ambitions to do something with the larger, more historic grain elevator building, and there'll be a little bit of parking here. DF Lane is moving along. If you go out, they've really cleared the site out, and you can see kind of how big the park will be. And their schedule is they will finish the majority of the work by the end of the year, and then in the spring they'll come in to do some additional plantings and maybe refresh the grass if they need to do that. I think that's it. Are there questions?
Other questions?
Just a comment, I walked through it, and yeah, they're going at it. One thing that I think we're gonna have to watch out for when you're keeping these cement and rock children, I know it's gonna be interactive, but when it comes to concrete and rocks with kids, it's kind of, so it'll be up to the parents to make sure that the kids are safe.
Yeah, there's no traditional playground. There's no expectation
Right.
that there'll be a traditional playground. But I think the engineers and designers are certainly keeping everything in mind to
Yep.
make sure that small
And-
people and big people
And
are
a
safe.
last question is that the grain building has been deemed dangerous, so how are we gonna keep people away from that building, which, give a good distance so that, nothing should happen?
There's a fence in the plans that will go around it. We can certainly look at that type of fence and see if it's adequate, but right now the plans include some fencing to go around the entire building.
I mean, just looking after going down there and just seeing cleaned around that building, all the weeds and things, I mean, it's a nice building. I really hope something can be done with it. I know the Historical Society, and I know there's been a little go-around with the board about is it worth it, and so I hope we keep that on our menu.
Yeah, it is, I can tell you tonight, Member Novak, it certainly is. When Eamon and I were out there the other day, we were just looking at it, and we came to the same conclusion, particularly since some of the landscaping work around has been clear. And just to remind everybody, particularly at home in the board, there's been no formal decision with the building. It was mostly a decision that the board had discussed, as Joe referenced, was just, we didn't have enough money in this latest round of community development block grants to do anything with that building in addition to the other work. So a decision was really made, that was just not to do anything with it. It's expensive to stabilize the building. It's not in imminent danger of falling down, but that doesn't mean it'll always be in that condition. It's just every time we put architects and engineers in there, the price tag to formally stabilize it and ensure it doesn't come down at all in the future is cost prohibitive. In order to revision it and do something with it, that's hard. What purpose will it serve? What is the value to the public in order to invest in that building? If there's anybody out there that is interested in it and would like to partner with the town, we would love to hear from you, particularly if there's dollars, associated with that. We're very open-minded in terms of partnerships and what we can do with it. Having it come down, I would say at this point, is a last resort that we would do for safety, or simply we just don't have the funds to do it. Perhaps in the next, will be in 2 years, I believe, the next round. If we can inch it along for the next 2 years, maybe that becomes the CDBG focus in 2 years. But I think between having the historic tourist train ride nearby, having the park, the river there, you look at any vintage photograph of that area, it's there. So it's not an easy decision. It's just cost prohibitive. So it's just a quick update on that building for everybody.
Are there any plans, or is there space for a concession area, like for refreshment stand, a bike rental? It's right on the bike path.
There's not necessarily, but there's not a planned space. There is this plaza that you can certainly have like a little house.
Or
type
somebody
thing.
like Poseidon Coffee or some places.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be an appropriate place for it.
We'll be treated the same way, as public property. So if somebody has an idea, they can come forward and pitch it to us, and we could see what could work out. I've said this before, many times, but as we do different things like this with the community, it's always helpful to have a partner involved, whether it's the beautification team or something like that. It helps us expand the offerings to the public that we can't really do ourselves as town government.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Becky.
Thanks, Becky.
Sure.
She has no stage hands. She takes care of
I
herself.
know, wow.
And batting cleanup is our director, Eamon Coughlin. He's going to speak tonight about our next large road project that we're going to be undertaking. This is the Park Street Rehabilitation Project. A little bit of background, I don't know if anyone was going to go into it, but the last time that any work was done on Park Street was in the 2014 era. I can tell you that Park Street itself, in 2014, it was a pretty comprehensive program. It was more of a streetscape program. We did sidewalks, we did the ornamental lighting, we did the pedestrian bump outs. Right out of the gate, I can tell you that this project will not be that invasive. However, I just want to remind everybody watching at home, or anybody concerned about what the implications or impacts will be of the construction project, that we don't have much of a choice but to rehabilitate the road. Our choices are very simple. We rehabilitate the road. We do so in a thoughtful way as best we can, pursuant to engineers and Mass DOT, or we don't do anything and the road continues to deteriorate. So we are very much aware of what impacts happened in 2014. We're aware of what the impacts could be here. And you'll hear a little bit later about a public information hearing for next week that will go through the details. But tonight, I'll turn it over to Eamon. We are kind of proud that we're going to be able to do that this year. Staff, Eamon and his staff have worked very hard to try to get this project to a point where not only is it effective, but cost effective.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. We've been working on this project for, I think, almost a year now, working to get it going. We're very close. Bids are basically ready. They'll be available to contractors for this work starting tomorrow. And we hope to have our bid opening for the project on September 28th. So a pretty short advertising period to try to find a contractor. We're eager to get the project going, and with any luck, we'll be able to complete it this fall. But we're unsure. We're going to have to work with a contractor to kind of nail down a real construction schedule and timeline. But basically the work, this is basically two projects rolled into one. We're looking at Park Street. We're going to basically repair and reconstruct the pavement profile only in the vehicle travel lanes. We're not touching the parking lanes or the sidewalks in this project. We're just repairing the vehicle travel lanes down to a depth of 6 inches. The rest of the pavement is going to remain as is. This portion of the project on Park Street is funded through $100,000 in capital that was appropriated at the last annual town meeting. As well, and the remainder of it will be funded through Chapter 90. It's a really high priority due to the deteriorating pavement condition, which you can see these really deep ruts have formed in Park Street, and the fact that this is, I think, the most heavily trafficked or used roadway in town. In 2022, there's about 11,000 vehicles using the roadway every day, so a lot of traffic. The deep ruts have formed due to the unstable base that's underneath the existing pavement. We did core samples as part of this project. There's a mix down there of old trolley track, brick, concrete, and mixed in between those layers and all around it is mud and silt, which is shifting and moving and heaving, and has caused the roadway to start to fall apart. So again, it's a high priority due to that, the fact that it's deteriorating quickly and just the fact that it's a really, really heavily trafficked roadway. So to attempt to get the best pricing on the project, we've rolled this work on Park Street in with another grant that we received from MassDOT. We received a $200,000 shared streets grant to look at improving crosswalks and crossings along at 9 locations on Columbia Street, basically from Walgreens Memorial School up to the roundabout. So we're looking at we'll bring those crosswalks and crossings up to modern standards. The crosswalks in those, or crossings in those locations are pretty outdated at this point. And this work, will certainly help to improve pedestrian safety, and also anticipates a future in which we have more pedestrian use associated with the senior center being located at Memorial School, and also Memorial School being converted or redeveloped into housing. We're also looking on Columbia Street at installing at least one flashing beacon, they're called RRFB, or Rapid Rectangular Flashing Beacon. A couple were installed on Commercial Street as part of that work. They're very popular, and they're sort of the gold standard in terms of helping pedestrians safely cross the road and improving pedestrian safety in general. So yeah, again, Jay, I think you got the point across effectively, but we know this work is going to be impactful. We're going to do whatever we can to work with a contractor to ensure that we keep those impacts to a minimum, and that we can also, the expectation, I think, for businesses and residents along, especially along Park Street, should be that there's likely going to be no parking available or allowed while construction is occurring, but we'll work with the contractor to determine if we can kind of scale that expectation back a little bit and see if we can phase in parking.
How long will the construction be going on for? What's the span?
Again, we have no idea. We'd like to work to be done this fall, and I anticipate it'll be done this fall, but some work might have to finish up in the spring. For instance, we could get feedback from a contractor that they may be able to do the subsurface work and put the initial layer of pavement down this fall, but they may come back in the spring and do the top coat or they may want to just do some of the crosswalk work on Columbia Street, and maybe paving gets pushed this spring. We're really going to have to see.
That was how Commercial Street was done. If you recall, the base coat was put down. We went through winter, and then the spring, they came back and they did the final coat. One of the reasons why Eamon is saying we're hopeful for the fall is we know the condition of Park Street is deteriorating, and we're concerned about another frost thaw cycle on Park Street may exacerbate some of the cracks and some of the grooved areas of the street. What we would really like to avoid is having to go out there in the spring and, for safety reasons, address those cracks and address those deficiencies using asphalt, using the hot box. That costs money. To put that material down and then only a matter of a few weeks later, when the weather breaks, to tear it all up again and to do the rehabilitation work. So we're really hoping that we can get it in. The other piece to this I'll say too is if we were to draft the request for proposals, that essentially orders by contract, the contractor, to complete the work in a short period of time, by operation, those contracts are always more expensive because the contractor has to work within a shorter time frame. So our engineers had advised us don't do that, and just work with the contractor to best to mitigate those impacts. So if anyone's sitting there thinking, oh, you should just make it a contract requirement, have this done by December 1st, that would probably put the cost higher than what we could afford.
Yeah, also it may reduce the pool of bidders, and we just
That's true,
may have
right.
just fewer people interested in the project if there's such a tight turnaround, so. So I'll just pitch again the meeting that we'll be holding a meeting next Wednesday, September 13th, here in this room at 5:30 p.m. To discuss the project. A letter was sent to all abutters basically along the entire project corridor last week. So they should have, I believe they've all received it by now, or should have received it by now. And we've seen some social media things starting to trickle in a little bit. So we'll see what concerns are brought up at that meeting and try to address them as best as possible.
Thanks, Eamon. I'll open up for questions.
Yes,
Sure, Joe.
thank you. I was wondering, what did you say, how far they're going to go down where the rutted areas are?
Yeah, the plan is 6 inches. They may have to go down a little bit deeper in certain areas, and there's been an allowance built into our project budget to do a little bit more
Because as you
extensive.
mentioned, if you just go down 6 inches, you're not going to be taking out a lot of the rubble that's probably there, and I just fear that it would be just a matter of time before, this would happen again. Because I was a little disappointed when I first got on the board. That was the year they were doing it, so this is going to be, I think it's my 11th year, and, it seems to me that things should last longer for the amount of money
Yes.
you pay.
No, absolutely. In fact, to your point, Joe, we had wanted to go down 10 inches.
10 inches, yeah.
Yeah.
And just the price
Yeah.
to go from 6 to 10 was astronomical. And the life expectancy with this project, I think the engineers are telling us we got about 10 years
10 years.
on this.
Yep.
If we went down 10 inches, we might get another 5 to 10 years. And it just, we're surprised that we're talking about this at, the 10-year mark. It's the same conversation we had about Howland. But the cost is just astronomical for it. So, we did look at it. And if we wanted to go down there, our goal is you do it once, do it right.
Yeah.
And we're trying to make the best of this one. It has to be done. But you're right in terms of depth.
Yeah, I just kind of worry about that because I think, there's so much traffic that goes through there, and I think I've discussed this with you, Jay, the trailer trucks. They're
Yeah,
loaded
absolutely.
and they're,
Yep.
they're coming down that street all the time because that's the only way they can go.
Right. And that's the conversation, you heard Doug mention it, tonight
Yeah.
about specialty minerals. I
Yeah.
sit in my office and, there's a variety of truck traffic, but, you can't deny that both Holland and
Right.
Holland Company and Specialty has a wide variety of truck traffic. Now, that's their business. Their business located in Adams, and we do that. But when you talk to them and you realize that their commodities, they could do much better by rail.
Sure.
That's what prompted our conversation to say, what is it that, 2015 range, that line, the Adams branch was completely rehabilitated. And it wasn't just for the tourist train operation, it was to benefit those two businesses. One of
they
those
have-
businesses is hazmat.
They have rail going right down to there.
Yes, right. So we're due to meet both with Holland and Specialty. Doug's, part of that, to to talk about how the town can assist them in working with the railroad to get better switching service, better interchange service, which in turn for the town would reduce the truck traffic and give us better life expectancy on these roads.
Yeah, that's just my main concern, because it just seems frugal if we do this. I know, but Park Street's in tough shape. It really is. I mean, it's our main thoroughfare. We have to do something, and, you know, that's what people see when they come through our main, you know, the main of our town. So I'm all for it. If we have the money, we might as well use it, and just hope we get the 10 years out of it. I don't know, what kind of warranty or guarantee do you get out of it?
Right, yeah, no, I think some of it's, I think any warranty on that is probably a matter of months.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly, yeah.
Like a building.
Yeah.
But, you know, like Howland Avenue, you know, we've been very lucky, you know, with the help of our state rep on Howland Avenue, Commercial Street with the MPO process. To your point, you know, Joe, we're paying attention to the main thoroughfares to try to get that done. You know, we'd love to be in the neighborhoods, obviously, and we'll eventually get there, but we have to take care of the main corridors here, and you know, that pretty much, with the exception of, you know, sections of Columbia Street, we'll have most of our main thoroughfare done with a new surface.
Yeah, and I think we'll definitely get some backlash from business owners and people. That's expected.
It is, and like I said before, we just ask for everybody's patience. We can't, if we were to do this at night, you know, again, you know, if somebody's sitting at home saying, just do it at night. Well, it has to be a prevailing wage job, because we're using state grant money for it, and we're a municipality. So if we were to do that, that's time and a half, a third shift, overnight, you know, differential, it's more expensive. So we hear you, we understand. If we could just wave the magic wand and have it done without any impact, we do it. So to Member Novak's point, please be patient with us. We are taking care of the road, and we'll try to get it done as fast as we can.
And the last thing I'd like to say, I'm not an engineer by any means, but I was wondering, like, you know, the lanes, has anybody ever used concrete? I think that's got more bearing weight, and, you know, I don't know about that, but like where, you know, the wheel tracks are always, you know, I don't.
Yeah, again, that's just a cost issue. I mean,
Yeah,
a lot
right.
of, you know, you see a lot of highways obviously built out of concrete, or main thoroughfares
Yeah.
through commercial areas, but it's such an expensive product.
Well, blacktop isn't all that cheap now either.
No.
Anything oil-based is, okay, that's all I have. I'm all for it. We need to get that street looking better.
Yeah, back to the rail issue. If the issue, one of the issues is the life of the road, and 90% of specialty minerals product is shipped by heavy truck, and the heavy trucks do most of the damage, and you combine that with Holland and others, I can see that it could be a huge benefit from moving to rail, as well as the tourist side. So what are the issues involved? What are,
On the rail side?
to really, get the business's access to rail?
So just talking about specialty minerals, just to hone it in on specialty, they ship 2 of their 3 products out by rail. So they receive inbound empty cars, and then they ship out the precipitated calcium carbonate and the calcium carbonate by rail. That means that the railroad has to supply an adequate amount of empty freight cars. Those are the square hoppers that you see, and the tank cars that you see. The tank cars, I believe, are the PCC, and the square cars are the CC. The railroad has to switch in sufficient empty cars, and that's what you see sitting at the Renfrew yard off of Lime Street. Those cars are staged, and they're empty. The plant comes down with what's called a track mobile. They do that themselves. Some railroads do it for businesses. There's not enough business on the Adams branch for the railroad company to do it. That's part of the issue.
Okay.
So Specialty comes down with a track mobile, their employees. They pull the empty cars out, they shove them into the plant, they load them. They pull the cars down, they put them back in the yard. This is where the railroad, the switching railroad, which had been historically New York Central, then Conrail, then Boston and Maine, then Guilford and Pan Am, all 3 kind of the same. Now CSX bought that property, but you're going to see it switched out by Genesee in Wyoming, which is a short line railroad, operating as the Berkshire and Eastern. It's bureaucratic and it's layered, and that's because the Surface Transportation Board said A particular area between Air, Mass, and Mechanicville cannot be operated solely by CSX, because that railroad line is also owned in part by Norfolk Southern. You may have heard Pan Am Southern. That's half Norfolk Southern, half Pan Am. So the STB, for monopoly purposes, said CSX can't operate it. So that's why this, as Doug said, the short line, Genesee and Wyoming, has been named the operator, and they're going to operate it as a Berkshire and Eastern. They will come in and then they will haul those outbound cars out. The more frequent a business can get inbound cars and get outbound cars out, that's called switching, the more truck traffic can come off the road. If the railroad can't provide that level of service, the business is forced to use trucks. And that historically has been the issue. The railroad cannot switch them out fast enough.
So the bottleneck is the switching?
The bottleneck is the carrier, yes. They cannot, as of now, they haven't been switching the plan out. They come down about 2 days a week and they'll swap the cars out. And Specialty says that they can handle more empty cars, load them, and ship them out if the railroad can keep up. And those are the conversations that both Holland and Specialty are having with the new switching contractor, the switching railroad, to be able to say, can you do this for us? Because when the cars leave, they go up to North Adams, that's the interchange. There's an interchange track up there. And then that local will take the cars, there's a couple ways to do it, but I'm keeping it simple. The locomotives will pull those cars out from North Adams, and then they go through the tunnel and they go east to East Deerfield Yard. At East Deerfield Yard, those cars are then reclassified and put into road trains to go to their final destination. And when you look at, as Doug was talking about tonight, those are your end product manufacturers. So automobile plants, part supply plants, where they're making the caulking and the sealing and the paint and all that. That little bit of Adams goes by rail car out to those different manufacturers by rail. We could do more of that if the railroad just sat there every day and just took cars in and cars out, and that, that's a cost-benefit analysis that the railroad has to make.
And that's the issue then?
That's really the issue. There's different ways to do it. You could have a road, the railroad could just come in and pick up the loads and drop off the empties at North Adams, and then another contractor, another switching contractor, that all they do is work on the branch, could just come up and bring those cars down to Holland and Specialty. And also keep in mind that when that track was rehabbed, and if everybody recalls, I was involved not as town administrator, but on as president of the Berkshire Scenic Road Museum at the time, working with DOT, we made sure that the siding at Xylonite stayed in. And now, as town administrator, that was really good, because when we get Curtis paper plant, one of the things that we're going to try to put on the market is that has rail access. So there could down the road be additional business at that paper plant, via rail. So it's a live conversation. And when I met with the railroad along with Holland Company, Mike Batterini and Dan Holland invited me to the meeting with them. I mentioned that, and the railroad was very interested in working with us on an industrial development concept to put a business there. So there's a lot of potential back there for rail, but with the transition to a new company, with new labor contracts, it's, and knowing what I know about the railroad industry, it's at times of transition are a challenge. So we're going to let them let Beanie get their feet wet. Holland and Specialty will make connections with Beanie, develop networking, develop their relationships. They're going to monitor how Beanie is doing, and then assess it and go from there. And I think we as a community, we've supported Holland Company now, I think 2 or 3 times for what's called an IRAP, Industrial Rail Access Program, where they added tracks to Holland, the plant property in the back, where they can get more shipments inbound, which reduces the truck traffic. I believe at least 2 or 3 times. So we're going to figure out what we can do as a community to help. I think eventually a conversation with MassDOT that owns the tracks might have to happen. It's a very interesting bureaucracy, railroading these days, where you now have public ownership of the tracks, you have a private company operating the railroad, and then you have the private industry that needs to work with the railroad. It's interesting.
Thanks, Jay. So anything else on Park Street? Because I know we just went off a little bit on a tangent.
You went off track?
We went off track. I want to keep us back. I want to go back.
It's a good question.
I mean, it was a good question about how rail and having rail you know,
But it
could
takes
support,
the load by taking the
Right.
load off. Okay.
Absolutely.
correct.
Absolutely.
I understood, but I was like.
It wasn't
before we
totally
go-
off track.
Eamon's glad,
Come back to Park
Eamon's just
Street.
like, I'm glad Jay answered that.
Yeah, so we can go
I don't
back
know
to any
anything about
questions about Park Street or the crosswalks. So this map here that you have here, these are the 9
Yeah, the map, those
crosswalks?
are the 9 crosswalk locations that we're gonna be looking at.
And then this is what will be part of the bid package?
Yep.
That goes out tomorrow?
Yep, yeah, that basically that's a diagram that just shows the pavement area, or the area that'll be repaved. Basically, it's from the Ashwaubenon Trail crossing near the post office, north to Maple Street or like McKinley Square area.
Okay. Great.
I have
Thank-
a
oh, sure,
question
John.
on that. You mentioned it will become more busy when Memorial School is developed, and how do we stand with that developer? Has there been any movement?
Yeah, just recently. He just reached out early this week and said that he wanted to come back in and speak with us as he's close to or has all of his, I'm not sure exactly what the message relayed, but about his capital funding for the project. We'll meet with him and see where he goes, and if, at this point, I would think that if he's not where he can actually execute, we might be coming back to the board and saying, time to put this back out and get somebody who can execute.
So after that meeting, we can talk about putting this on an
Yeah,
agenda?
absolutely. Yeah, let us see what he has to say.
Anything else about Park Street?
Nothing else to
or
add, yeah.
crosswalks? Okay.
And I just had one
Thanks.
question for
Sure.
Jay about the railroad. When people use the rail, like Industries, if the carrier is carrying hazardous waste material, does that cost more for the shipper?
It does.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Yep,
Yeah.
you got it.
Thank you to the Community Development Department. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Great
right.
team performance.
They are. They work very hard. They're good people. Kevin Rayner's a closet comedian. Don't let him kid you.
It's good to know.
So, warm up the audience before our next select board meeting.
So you're saying there's a fundraiser in our future?
Could
for-
be.
Said I'd be here all night.
Well done. Delivery was great, Kevin. Thanks. All right, so subcommittee and liaison reports. Joe?
No, it's been pretty slow. I don't have anything there.
Okay. Howard?
I have nothing.
I have nothing either. Announcements in good of the order. We have one on the agenda, that is the public information session that Eamon has talked about. So this will be next Wednesday, so in lieu of a workshop or a meeting. The board is encouraged to attend the public information session about the Park Street Rehabilitation Project. It'll be held in this room at 5:30 PM next Wednesday, September 13th. So thank you for that and for getting that out. So if you know anybody, I know that Eamon has mentioned that the letters have gone out to folks, but if any board members know anybody in this corridor or who might be impacted by this or who might have an opinion, please encourage them to come to the public information session.
And the time again?
5:30 PM.
Okay.
And then the other piece is that there is a bulky and electronics recycling waste day coming up Saturday, September 16th. It'll be in Lanesboro. However, it is open to all towns that are members of the Northern Berkshire Solid Waste Management District, so that includes the town of Adams. There is a list of household items that can be accepted in the cost for those items. So if you need this, you can go to the Northern Berkshire Solid Waste Management's website, but I know that the tax collector has copies of this flyer on the desk, and I think there are some in the hallway as well. So, but that is from 8 AM to noon on Saturday, September 16th in Lanesboro. I think that's all I have for announcements. Joe, do you have anything?
Yeah, I have a few things. It will take a little while, but I'll try to get through them quickly.
Okay.
As far as the educational center, I spent some time up there. How are we doing with costs? Are we having any overruns or?
There's about $150,000 worth of change orders, and that's within our budget tolerance. I'm feeling probably sometime in October, we're due for a good update with the board.
Okay.
We'll give
Okay.
everybody. but
So
we're-
October, you'll do an agenda
I
item?
think we'll be due for one in
Because
October.
I know you
Okay.
meet on Tuesdays, I believe, and you
Yeah.
have meetings.
Yep.
Another thing too is the trail condition of the metal loop. It's starting to bother me. You know, we've got to step up if we're going to be stewards of that property. I mean, it's growing in on the sides, there's weeds coming up through the rocks, it's encroaching, and I don't know what to do other than, you know, people will have to step up and do something, because it's starting to bother me when I'm thinking, oh, we're going to have a camping area and this type of thing. So that's just on my mind. I don't want any reaction or anything, you know, it's just something that's been bothering me. And I happen to be up there because I spend time up at the educational center, you know, cleaning up around and just see what's going on. And I saw Eamon and Becky, they were there with the Audubon, looking it over, which is a good sign. That's all I'll say about it. It could be something that we can talk about another time. But another thing is the bike trail. When we talk tourism in this community, it could be the linchpin of what's going to happen. And I see Lime Street, where that bike sign is for the Ashwiltacook Bike Trail, it's just, it shouldn't look like that. I mean, I know we don't have enough people, you know, but that's got to stop with that kind of thing. We have to get people that want to step up and do the work that's needed. It might not be easy, but I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon as I feel an enabler and saying, oh, they're doing a great job, because I don't personally believe it. I mean, it's hard for me to say. I like everybody that's on the highway department, but I think they need to step up. That's all I'm going to say about that. And without the group that's going around and taking care of our planting beds and things, I couldn't imagine how this town would look with all of those people. Every time I see them, I say, thank you so much. You're making a big difference in this community, which they are. I mean, all of our planting beds look great. And that's important when people come through a community to see how things are taken care of. And I had something brought to my attention, and I don't know if it's true or not, but I was told by someone that the building where the Hoosick School Administration building down here on Park Street, all the electric that was put in was paid by the school, all the electric.
Don't know those details.
Because if that's the case, it doesn't seem right that it's a private business and, you know, the school or whoever is paying for putting all the electric hookups in. It just doesn't strike me as right. So I just heard that, it's hearsay, maybe I shouldn't bring it out, but I think it's something I wish that you could look into.
I can look into. I can also, you know, tell you too that commercial leases have different, you know, like for example, what they may be paying in rent is
Yeah.
less than market rate in return for installing.
Well,
it,
yeah, if
you
that's
know.
the case,
Could
that's
be.
different.
But I can
Different.
ask Aaron what they.
Yeah,
I know that
really-
they had. I know that they had to have phone lines installed
Right.
over there
Well,
too.
I've seen
and-
all
and
the
a few
work
other
being done in there with Summer Electric and, you know, Spectrum and everything, getting the Wi-Fi or whatever else goes in there.
I can ask the superintendent.
Yeah, I really wish you would. And lastly, where the old Topia Inn is, I asked you a long time ago, and you said, oh, that would be the easy one. Right in front of that building, there's a sign, and you can't see what it says, like it's no parking on
Still
either side.
Wasn't done yet?
No, and I mean.
It's right by the trail?
No, it's right by Ina Moore's,
Yeah, that's her new, that's the new
trail?
name.
the name of
The
it, the
trail.
trail, yeah.
But the old inn?
Yeah, and the sign's right there. and
Facing
it's no
north-
parking,
facing
and
north or south?
You can't read it, the
Is
two
it
arrows.
facing north or south, he's asking?
Well, they're both, it's right on the same side that her building is, but there's two arrows you can't see, and it's no parking. So, I mean, she's getting a lot of business, and she owns a house over there too, beside that. It'd be
Yeah.
nice to clarify where you could
She
park.
hasn't said anything, but
Yeah.
we'll,
And the last thing, I didn't take too much time, is I've read an article in the Eagle, I'm sure everybody did, it says, who gets to claim Susan B. Anthony? And that was, it was by Melissa Silverstein, and she's the president of the Adams Cultural Board. And I thought it was a well-written article, and it was about, you know, Carol Crossett, who owns it, who's pushing the agenda that Susan B. Anthony was pro-choice, and there's been a lot of back and forth from historians that say there was no place, where you can definitively say that Susan B. Anthony was, against abortions and that type of thing. And one thing that bothered me about it was that as the Cultural Commission, I don't even know if they're still going, it was stated in the article that the cultural district map that we want Susan B. Anthony has on that map, they said that they're not going to okay it because they think it's ahistorical what's going on, because, and it's true, Carol Crossett, I know Carol, she's put $200,000 to, these groups that are, and so, but I just want to say that I'm proud that Susan B. Anthony was born in this community. Let the historians fight on those type of issues, but there's no doubt that Susan B. Anthony helped women get the right to vote. That's not in question. So let the historians fight, but don't, bring it to a point where it's push and pull. Let's get some concrete evidence. Who's got the best evidence of, was she a racist because she cared more about the white people than the black people. So let that up to historians, but, I'm proud that Susan B. Anthony was born in this town, and I'm sure everybody in this community, in this area, in this country, was happy that Susan B. Anthony was born here in Adams. And that's all I have, long-winded, so that's all I have.
Thank you. Howard, anything for announcements? Okay. Our next meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, September 20th at 6 p.m. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will second it.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. We are adjourned.
Bree, nothing
Thank you very
to
much.
sign?
Yes, things to sign.
Oh, yes, right, the licenses.